From KVUE News in Austin, you're watching Texas This Week with Ashley Goodo.
Good Sunday morning. Property tax relief. We've been talking about it for months now after lawmakers vowed to use the state's record-breaking surplus to give Texans a break, and then Republican leaders failed to reach an agreement on how to do it. Well, now we're in the second special session, and House Democrats are vying for a seat at the table. A group of Democrats filed a bill this week proposing a different tax plan. We sit down with the author of the bill, but first, let's get to the 3 things you need to know in Texas politics. The city of Houston is suing the state of Texas, questioning the constitutionality of House Bill 2127, what opponents call the Death Star Law. It prevents local governments from passing ordinances or rules related to things already regulated by state law. And it will undo existing ordinances in these areas, including ordinances requiring water breaks for construction workers, regulating tow truck companies, noise ordinances, and so much more.
What this means is that cities like the city of Houston cannot pass ordinances in these areas unless the state of Texas explicitly gives us permission to do so. That is a total reversal from the way things have been in this state for more than a century.
Republicans say the law reined in cities that were creating a patchwork of regulations across the state that burdened businesses. Opponents see it as eroding the powers of the state's urban areas, which are almost all led by Democrats. The law is set to go into effect September 1st. Suspended Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton will not testify during his Senate impeachment trial. His attorneys revealed that decision in a lengthy statement Monday night. Paxton's attorney, Tony Busby, blamed the House investigation for bringing what he calls wrongful impeachment articles, writing, quote, "We will not bow to their evil, illegal, and unprecedented weaponization of state power in the Senate chamber. That is why Attorney General Paxton will not dignify the illegal House action by testifying," end quote. The Senate could still compel Paxton to testify, but Busby says they will fight it. The gunman who killed 23 people during a mass shooting at an El Paso Walmart back in 2019 will serve 90 consecutive life sentences. A federal judge handed down the sentence Friday, recommending the shooter be taken to a maximum security prison in Colorado. The shooter pleaded guilty to nearly 50 federal hate crime charges earlier this year. Moments before the attack, he wrote a racist post online targeting Hispanics. There is still a pending state trial where the shooter faces the death penalty. On Thursday, State Representative John Bryant and a group of House Democrats laid out a new property tax relief plan. House Bill 62 includes elements of both the House and Senate plans that came from the other side of the aisle, but puts a larger focus on giving Texas public schools more funding. Representative Bryant joined me to talk about his plan. You know, we've heard so much about the Senate plan, the House plan. This week, you unveiled a plan. Before we get into the details of it, tell us what really inspired you to put a plan together.
Well, the majority has not been able to come up with a plan in a regular session or one special session. So here we are in the second special session, and nothing that has been talked about appeared to be either workable or fair. And nothing that has been talked about protects our public schools. And you can't talk about property taxes without also talking about public education, because the property taxes we're talking about are the property taxes that pay for our public school system. So we introduced a bill that, number one, took care of the public school systems by increasing significantly the amount of money that we're spending. You know, Texas is 44th in its support of public education. So we increased that by a meaningful amount and by enough to give teachers a pay raise of $4,300 a year, which would be indexed to inflation, all of the contribution that we made, which is called the basic allotment, so that every year it will go up with inflation and not have to be debated over and over. Then we increased the tax homestead exemption for homes by almost double, by allowing it to go up to 25% of the appraised value. What you've been hearing about is $100,000. we're saying $100,000 or 25%, whichever is higher. So it could go as high as $200,000, which would be meaningful property tax relief. And then very significantly, our proposal is the only one that takes into consideration rental households, and they make up 38% of all households in the state. So they contribute to the surplus through their sales tax expenditures, just like everybody else. They must be considered as well. And so we have a rebate plan where a rental household could receive as much as 10% of their annual rent as a rebate, recognizing that to be an approximate amount that they are probably paying indirectly in property taxes.
The governor really wants to see a reduction in the M&O tax rate. He eventually wants to see the M&O tax rate eliminated altogether. We'll get to that part in just a minute. But yeah, you offer a bit of a reduction. However, it is significantly less. The original House bill was 16 cents. The Senate bill is 10 cents. You only want to go down to 6 cents.
Right. Well, the governor talks about eliminating it, but the governor has to propose where is the revenue going to come from to replace it. This is money that is essential to independent school districts that haven't seen an increase in funding for 10 years. So we don't want to talk about reductions in what we do for the school districts unless somebody's going to talk about how we replace the funding.
You know, it has felt like up until this point, the Democrats have kind of been sitting this fight out. We've been watching a lot of Republicans fight about which plan is better, and we hadn't heard, you know, from Democrats. Why was it important to get this out and to come up with a plan?
Well, Democrats have been in a minority in the legislature for 20 years, and they have I think, developed some passive habits of standing around the outside and trying to get crumbs by just having a smile and a shoe shine and being friendly. Many of us think it's time for Democrats to reassert themselves in the policymaking arena and be in the conversation. Until this bill was introduced, you'll recall in the last many months, Democrats have not even been in the conversation with regard to property taxes. It's been an argument between the lieutenant governor, the speaker, and the governor. So this is an effort to reassert, you know, Democratic priorities in this debate.
Yeah. How do you think this is going to go over, though? You introduced this plan. Have you talked to the speaker? Have you tried to shop it to him? Have you talked to any, you know, Democrats in the Senate about it?
Well, I've met this morning with the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee about it. He's very cordial. I want to speak with the speaker as well, but we just introduced it yesterday, so that'll take place today or as soon as he can take time for me. I'm not optimistic that they're going to change what they're in favor of and embrace what we're in favor of. I am hopeful that with public support, when we offer it on the floor as an amendment, that we can get some of the Republican members to come over and vote with us. Even offering it as an amendment will be a challenge because amendments have to be germane and have to otherwise conform with the rules. And these are very complicated bills, so we're hopeful we'll be able to present it as an amendment. We have a $33 billion surplus. We're 44th in the state effort to support public education. In the Appropriations Committee, subcommittee on education, which I'm a member of, I pointed out that we ought to at least try to move in this session from 44th to 25th, be right in the middle at least for public education in the country. The cost of doing that, $33 billion. In other words, this surplus is not a result of brilliant management. It's not even a result of good luck. It's mostly a result of depriving public education of the money that is required simply to make us 25th in the country instead of 44th. So we have to keep our eye on public education throughout this whole process. This proposal is one that says, let's deal with property tax relief because it's a crisis, but let's also deal with public education because that's our first responsibility.
So let me ask you this. This plan is the most expensive plan, $20.9 billion. How would we continue to pay for it?
It's paid for. Every element of it is paid for. It's the money is there. It's within the comptroller's estimates. It's one that we could adopt tomorrow, and I think we'd make a lot of homeowners and rental households happy, and we be taking a big giant step towards supporting our public school system.
But do you have concerns about future years when there's not a surplus to be able to pay for this plan?
But that's true of all the plans. We hope, of course, that this surplus will in the future not be regarded as a surplus, but it will become just part of our annual revenue estimate. No one can predict that.
You can find a link to the bill at KVUE.com. That's Texas This Week.